things you do today you will not be doing tomorrow. But I also know that our people need to go through some of these experiences. And at the same time, I also know aware, and I was aware that the time would come that the nations of the earth would stop buying U.S. Treasury bonds, and you would have the feedback loop, which I've been telling people for years. And so now you got all these trade embargoes, and so now people are starting to feel it, aren't they? So you're not going to have to keep on arguing with these people to make them comprehend what Noble Drew did when he established the Divine National Movement, because it has a purpose. And now you can also see those who have been countering it, because it's becoming more and more obvious, because it's coming to the surface, and you can discern for yourself. My concern and my energy is involved in bringing up certain issues that help people make discernment, so that people, by their own will and intent, can help fix this thing, because it's your birthright. It's not somebody's good idea that you're a club member to. And it's so important for that to be clear to you. And this is also for people over the years that keep trying to assign me to things that my mother didn't assign me to. My mother assigned me to what I'm doing. I'm a fisherman. I'm a carpenter. I'm a builder. That's what I do. And for those who have those skills, if that's what their mother made them for, go ahead and do it. More power to you.
I'm trying to get to the there were a lot of questions in here pertaining to how one should nationalize. I mean, because there's probably as many responses.
Make that very clear to me.
How? I mean, they're literally questions about how to nationalize, and so.
Oh yeah. Now, and this is. Give me that treaty book again, please. Yeah, very important. Because this is very important, and this is what people need to understand or comprehend. And again, I will remind you how this stuff is often redundant. Now, as far as the Naturalization Act, and now this goes with the citizenship, and as you all know, that they're having problems here, not only at North America, but around the world, with territorial jurisdictional issues being breached, and people in the political realm being forced to address it. And they'll call it foreign innocent immigrants coming across the Mexican border or the Canadian border, etc. And so now the issues of territorial jurisdiction is being addressed reluctantly and creating a bunch of problems. But the masses have not been told that the issue that are being addressed with the so-called immigrant problem and families being separated, etc., is territorial jurisdiction. And for them to actually have legitimate claim of argument or counter argument in the international venue of what is called international law, now you're talking back to what is known as the common law or nature's law. Now you got to name the mothers. So now the issue of nationality is being brought up, even though they're not defining it to the people, because in order to have argument, they got to identify themselves. So how is these foreign Europeans here, and I'm not supporting one side or another, I want you to look at, examine this, because this is for your teaching. This is for your instruction. This is for your comprehension. When they're talking about the different people coming from South American islands and South American nations up to North America under the United States, remember, the United States is a private corporation. The political jurisdiction is America, and they are Americans. Most of these people that they're calling immigrants. Now they're caught because they're still trying to promote that the United States Corporation Company is the country. As a matter of fact, they'll often say America, which is also a false paradigm without explanation, because that's the continent. You see the problem that they're having right now? So the things that they're having right now, problems that they're having right now, Noble Drew just over 100 years ago to the Moors of the land. And now these things are being placed before you in your experience for your learning. So now in relationship to even the issue of the Moors here and their nationality, we're going to go here in the treaty book. And that printing is direct from the congressional records, etc. and I left the printing in its original form rather than typing it over. And as I said before, because I already know that we have operatives among our own. A lot of people were sent around that like the sister said earlier, that you trusted. I already know because a lot of people, everybody has something to offer. However, I already knew in due time they would expose themselves. A lot of them mad at me now, don't want to speak to me. I don't care. Well, I already knew many of them that were agents from the beginning. But we're in a mess. You got to learn to work with people. And you got to learn that, like the sister said earlier, we're going to have to shed some of these people. But without knowledge, you won't know how to vet them. So here we go. I want you to look in this. And so that is page 460. And this is a print off, not the actual pages in the book. This is for your reference, for your research. Citizenship of the United States, expatriation, etc. Statement. There are, however, numerous treaties and conventions between the various Christian countries and the Moorish Empire, by means of which citizenship in this country is defined. But as I understand from the above acknowledged instruction, that's plural, instructions, that it is not the desire of the department to call for a report upon such lines, which means they don't want to expose, they don't want to make this, public controversy. I will therefore confine these remarks to general conditions existing, which may possibly be of some use in connection with the information desired. Number one, citizenship in Morocco may be said to be governed by the laws pertaining to the same in other countries. So these are universal principles. Keep this in mind. With the exception that all persons residing in Morocco who cannot prove foreign citizenship or protection are considered ipso jure as Moorish subjects. That means you got to prove that you ain't Moorish. If you're here, North America, which is really Morocco, under the occupation of the United States Corporation Company, because you can see right here, citizenship of the United States, and you can see right here, there it is, Morocco. It's not hidden, and it's not unknown that these people are Moors. Number 2 and 3, Moorish subjects lost their nationality only by becoming naturalized in or protected by another country having treaty relations with the Moorish Empire. It was established by the Convention of Madrid, concluded July the 3rd, 1880, etc. And so you see why they've been promoting the 14th Amendment Negro Acts and telling our people that they're Negroes instead of Moors, which would make them stock property. And that's what we've been suffering from. Now you understand why Noble Drawley say declare your nationality, because you got to clear your status up to even make claim to your estate. That's documented. And how many of your so-called Moorish leader guys avoid what I just said? That's documented. They'll tell people Taji guy made that stuff up. Lying their keisters off. That's why a lot of people are upset with me. And it's exposing a lot of people who've been around me for quite some time. They thought I didn't see them. I thought I see them. But I'm a warrior. I'm in the field. I'm getting my hands dirty. I don't need a fez. I don't need my turban. I don't need the jewelry. I'm down to earth, Taji guy with the cheap sneaks, getting work done. And those of you who need title, go ahead and have fun. I want to get the work done. I want to see my children and my children's children liberated. I don't need no crown.
Here's a question from Lamont Moy. It says, Emperor stated they, D-E-Y, were Caucasians. Who were the Days?
Caucasians are Moors. Duh. This goes back to the linguistic form. Caucasus Israel, under the rulership of Aunt, who was known as Aunt Hagar, who ruled the Yucatan, who ruled the Moabite nation in southwest of Mexico, known as the Yucatan. And her grave right now is in Mecca on the other side. How come they won't say that? Because the name that was given to the hybrid came from Yaqub Kushidus, Israel, etc. That's where the name come from that was given to the hybrid for sake of the hybrid experiments. Because there is no such thing as Caucasian in the concept that has been adopted in the modern world. You need to know your Moorish history. So when you're making these statements, the assumption on the connotative level of animal husbandry must not be established as the genetic and political reality as it has been promoted, because it's a false paradigm.
Did I just hear you say that the Caucasians were Moors?
Because who you think Yaqub was? He's a scientist.
But
his middle name was given to them.
But was that not an experiment that created a hybridization of Moors?
Now
and
you
other
got it. Yes,
beings?
now they're called amalgamated Moors, also referred to in the Bible as the Great Amalgamation.
Would those also be the lepers?
Yeah, exactly. That was put behind the lesion, behind the rock. So that's why the rocks or the mountains were called the Caucasus Mountains. It was named after the great experimenter with the 12 women scientists, who you rarely hear talking about. You only hear usually of Yaqub. And instead of saying Yaqub, they'll say Jacob Ladder.
They also
people need to really know. You need to know your Moorish history.
They also say that the women scientists that carried the experiment, they try to give them an extraterrestrial origin. They talk about Enki and Enlil.
Don't we all know? Let's be real. Don't we all know that all of us are not necessarily from this particular planet?
Oh yeah.
And that we have peopled other aspects of the planet, and in this particular hemisphere of the galaxy of this solar system, the humanoid figure, though taking variable forms, is common to this particular solar system. That's a fact. Now, the deal of it is the hybriding. This is where you go into, for those of you who have Oxford dictionaries. Now, here's your Oxfords. Let me see your Oxford dictionaries. You go look up hybrid. And hybrid, and they will tell you, and this is again why they don't have certain dictionaries in our communities, and this is due to the Sigmund Freud mind control operations in the education system. They will tell you in reference to the Albions, because remember, where we place them in what you call England, or land of Angles, which you call England, etc., is that when we ruled, that area was called Albion after we put the hybrids there behind the rock. This is where you get the Caucasian designation given to them from the scientists, etc. So that was given to them. This is also where you have the heterogeneous exposure, even in Oxford Dictionary. And they will say to you, and I think it's in around entry 8 or something like this. This is for you scholars to do your research. And they will say, we Englishmen are but heterogeneous hybrids at best. You will not find that in your regular dictionaries because of the animal husbandry dispensation, etc., by Sigmund Freud and adopted by John D. Rockefeller and Frederick T. Gates in 1902. With those, now they're not going to go into that logically because you will recognize that that you have what you would call the hybrid rebellion, and this is demonstrated to you in movie form, like the nemesis of the wicked witch of the west, and then the good witch of the east, and they're in battle representing matriarchy. Then you have Dorothy in the Wizard of Oz representing the matriarch, and then you have the Yellow Brick Road, which represents the zodiac constitution principle of the Canaanite Moabite nation cosmology, etc. And then you have the Anthropopithecus Pandidae with wings, representing the hybriding of off-world, etc., i.e., you would call them the flying monkeys. And then you have the Wizard of Oz, which represents the dogma systems of the representation of the Godhead principle, the corruption of humanity with the corruption of religion. All of that's in the Wizard of Oz. And it's also in many other movie forms that they tell you your history. And then you'll see, for those of you who have been into movies, look at the keep in mind, more in French is Moreau. So keep that in mind. That in French is a branch of Latin, Moorish Latin. And then you're going back to Iberia. And this is why a lot of people who really don't know the history of the takeover of Iberia in Europe will say, oh, well, Moor is French. French is African, you dummies. You know, our people, and the scholars have done this to our people. And the real deal of it is, that's why even in more recent years, because people who really don't know this history of Central America and the Yucatan, you know, keep thinking that Caucasian is really the pale-skinned species of the human stock in its hybrid form. Well, yes, that's a name given to them, but they're actually given the experimental term of albine or albion. This is where you get the term albino. And when you do the research and you all go into your old dictionaries, the land that you called England is known as Albion. Why? Because that's where we took the albinos. This is where it's talked in the Septuaginta in the Bible as the people with the lepers. They also, now you understand in Ireland when they talk about the leprechaun and the gold, etc., and the little green men, etc., and the golden rainbow and the pot of gold at the end. And then you talk about, as a matter of fact, in your King Alfred, for them, this is named after King Alfred in the Ireland area. And you'll talk about Tag Day, or when they ran the Moors, they say the snakes out of Ireland. That's you. They were killing off the Moors, the Dubs, and the Picts, etc. So in many ways, they're actually exposing the history. But if you don't know how we got to where we are, you see these things, and if no one makes you reconnected to it, you dismiss it as if it belongs to the Paleolith, when actually they genocided you out in Iberia, or what you call Europa, and now they're doing it to you in North America, which is silent weapons for quiet wars. They're continuing their Inquisition operations. That's why I make the distinction, and particularly as of late, hybrid Europeans, to make the distinction between the hybrids, which is a mixture of Pandidae and human species, and with some off-world. This is why they're hybrids. And this is also why they're warring on you. You need to understand, because they're not the people of the earth. They're hybrids. Now, that's not to be used negatively. That's the truth of the human walk. And if you are not ready to handle that, many people in secret societies know this information, but they only speak of it in attic chambers around the world. And so because they've hidden this history from the people keep looking at these as an original people. They're not original. They are hybrids. And the two particular heterogeneous species is the Pandidae and the humanoid. And that makes what you know as the Albion or the Caucasian tag from the experiments coming from Patagonia that is now called Argentina. And so when you do the research and you start looking at the problems that a man named Hitler had with trying to eliminate some of those problems that were inculcated in Germany that also was breaking them, etc., you're going to find that some of the history that was told to you about Hitler is incorrect. Now, you're getting in an uncomfortable area with a lot of people. And so some of these things are never talked about openly because you will be sanctioned. Because one of the first things that the Circle Church Circle Church and Curia members must do is pledge all economic operations of the United States Corporation Company of the Jesuit order to what they call Israel. Now tell me that's not a fact. So when you start learning who's really been running the banks, who's been running the schools, who runs the United States, who runs the judicial system and the POW camps, everybody wants to get persimmon mouth. It's the hybrid Europeans. Sometimes referred to as Khazarian, sometimes referred to as the Cabal, sometimes referred to as the Satanists, etc. But that's what's been happening to you and the world to this very day. And it's important for you to comprehend that so that you can start healing the Moorish nation. Because without the knowledge of how you got to this position, you will be fighting the wrong fight. That's the fact, y'all.
Okay. So DD, it says there are groups claiming to have AB bloodline of Jesus/Abraham Lincoln's Armenian lineage, saying they want sovereignty restored. However, without mention of Moors. I've been saying that. What does that mean for us?
Now,
I've been asking
remember
you that.
what we said to people for years. I said, remember I said this for years before this stuff came out with this cover up with this biological warfare, which they admit to right here, right? And I said, some people mistake when I say that Trump is a sign. I said, but keep this in mind, they're battling over our estate. Yeshua, because it ain't no Jesus. Jesus is a password. And that's why symbolically for the knowledge, Jesus is used connotatively as meaning justice when the knowledge comes out. Or when the truth comes out, it will make the people free. So what you call Jesus is Yeshua ben Yosef. And so they were Canaanite Moabite blood. This is, again, why they'll give you signals even in all your secret societies. They'll say, who was Ruth the Moabitess? And they'll say, Ruth the Moabitess was Jesus' great-great-grandmother. So who is the Moabites? Moabites are what? A branch of the old Canaanites from the land of Canaan, which is now called Israel. Isn't that interesting? Right next to Hikupta, that you know is Egypt and Saudi Arabia. Oh, so the real Sabians are Moors, aren't they? So it seems like somebody who's been claiming to be JEW are not who they claim to be. And they've been pretending to be you and killing you off. So we need to heal the nation, don't we? Without a knowledge of what happened to you, you will be distracted by people who are placed among you to distract you into not things are not, that's not that they're not important, but they're not where your cure is. I just remind you that, so you need discernment. And I'm not saying don't do certain things. I say do everything that you do with knowledge and discernment. And what we try to do here at the House of Reawakening Minds is share with you a lot of knowledge that we know others have, but they stay away from, because it will kill their little clubs and it will take their hands out your pockets. And it will get you to stop sacrificing the next generation with a bunch of beliefs and then start directing them to a knowledge. And with knowledge, the truth comes. And with the truth comes, so does the liberation and the restoration of the estate. So know ye the truth, and the truth will make you free. I'm more interested in that than a title, but I'm not condemning titles.
Ava asked, how is all this going to matter if they're fixing to shut down the grids and shove people into camps?
Of
Honest
course,
question
that's
here.
their plan. Of course, that's their plan. Now, this is your plan. The time has come, apparently, that the issue of nation states are coming up every day, and borderlines of territorial jurisdiction are coming up, and they're going to be forced to address what they haven't been addressing. So meanwhile, with the King Alfred plan, the genocide and biological warfare operations is already in place, isn't it? Isn't it? But the knowledge of the people will what? Start causing the people to say, I think I ought to render unto Caesar what is Caesar's and confess my own and honor my mothers and fathers so I can have right of inheritance. Oh, I think some of these things that people have been saying every year have a relationship, but not the way they thought it was when they were in these club organizations under the name of religion and dogma. It was never placed to them in the real world. Now we are all facing it. This is why I said a couple of years ago, people talk all kind of trash about their spirituality. Well, now you're going to have to prove you God. I ain't arguing with you. Do your thing. I'm about to work. And we all have shadow work to do. So let's work on our lower self, and Mother Nature will open up what you need. Because it's proving that the people won't buy or sell without that mark or license from the beast. Oh, so the beast is the number of a man, isn't it? Oh, you thought it was some Baphomet signal somewhere. No, he got 2 legs, 2 arms, and a head, and he's been doing a lot of dirty stuff to you, and you thought he was your government. Thought he was your banker. Thought he was your lawyer. They're Roman Curia members and Satanists of the Dark Order. And they've been ruling this planet. And the cleanup is on its way because the earth is your house. Get your house in order. Repair the nation. We need healing. And I'm going to tell you bluntly, because this stuff is coming out as we speak, not just later, because you're experiencing it now. A lot of people are going to need consolation and solace systems, because a lot of people aren't going to be able to handle necessarily, they're not going to be willing to handle the ugly that they're going to be exposed to. And before it gets better, it's going to get worse. And this is my response to the sister and to the statement. I support your statement in caring and everything, but I'm also realistic that in war, there's casualties. All the people, this is not an issue, although it could be an issue of saving the world, because whosoever will, let them come. Whosoever will, let them hear. And whoever so will, let them serve Rome, and Rome is going to devour them. That's the intent. It doesn't have to happen, but only by your will. And so what are we doing? We're doing our little part of trying to help in this great missionary work of uplifting fallen humanity. And often by dealing with subject matters and information that many people over the decades have deliberately avoided. They're more interested in titles, and they're more interested in being liked by the people. And they're more interested in having their hands into people's pockets. Oh, and I'm not denying that it takes finance to do things. I know that. However, that's not where I'm coming from. So I don't need a title. That's again for those who keep thinking I need a title. I don't need a title. I'm Taji guy with the cheap sneaks. Get over it.
So to reiterate that earlier question about whether you accepted that, but the answer was no.
Exactly. Because the deal, see, this is what must be comprehended too. And I'm saying this with all due respect and love and caring for all of our people. People have been groomed under animal husbandry to continue to do this practice of what they call the sacrificial lamb. And so the concept of human sacrifice is still with us, even though it's been hidden. And so people's dynamics of thinking in their so-called spiritual development is thinking that they need to sacrifice Jesus type thing, not recognizing that that's Rome's method of operations. And that's not Jesus's philosophy. Jesus was a target. Yeshua was a target for sacrifice. That's not his philosophy. And so they keep associating the sacrifice principle with Yeshua when it should be associated with Rome, who are bloodlusters. They come as the makers or bringers of peace when actually they're the peace breakers. They're showing it openly now because they don't have the time to keep on BSing you. They're doing it openly now. They're calling it mandate.
Mandate.
And mandate is not law. I think y'all better go in your law dictionaries and look up mandate.
Why don't you read it? What does it say in there?
Again?
What does it say in Black's law about a mandate?
Oh, let's go to it. And you know, this is again, Dr. Naila, why they don't teach our people, you know, fundamental laws. Mm-hmm. So mandate is a command, an order, or a direction, written or oral, which court is authorized to give and a person is bound to obey. Mandate is a judicial command or precept proceeding from a court of court or judicial officer directing the proper officer to enforce a judgment, sentence, or decree. A mandate is a precept or an order issued upon the decision of an appeal or a writ of error, directing action to be taken or disposition to be made of case by inferior court. And in some of the state jurisdictions, the name mandate has been substituted for mandamus. Mandate is a substitute for mandamus. Is why you see me all over years talking about for warranto, a writ, an agreement of jurisdiction, and an agreement of mandamus. So as a formal title of that writ, etc. A bailment of property in regard to which the bailee engages to do some act without regard. So it's clearly that it is totally a judicial act from an inferior court not having a constitutional foundation whatsoever. It's a decree made by an incompetent inferior court, logically not Article 3 and logically not constitutional, i.e. mandate.
Okay, so Richard Amonrod basis, can you talk about constructing a lien against corrupted officials?
And this is where, now let's look, this is the point. So for those who comprehend those principles, look up surety bond, write that down, surety bond. The same way that you would issue a writ or a claim against any other insurance bond, etc., is in itself a lis pendens in its nature against someone who trespasses against your right or your estate. Now we're back to the word estate, aren't we? And your status, isn't it? That's called the lien. And guess what happened when a couple of them are lodged against persons who claim to have authority that don't? The insurance companies will no longer back their bond because it will kill the commissioner's office. This is why they don't teach the people that anybody in political position that claim any authority by law must carry a surety or equity bond. And what that lien is a claim against their bond. That's why you do both quo warrantos and averments of jurisdictions, and you do research on anyone that claims authority because they have an equity bond, make a claim on it. That's a lien.
Can you explain what?
And now you're going to go ahead.
Explain quo warranto.
Quo warranto is what is known as the DOAO, or the authorized legitimate delegation of authority by which an office or an officer holds office, with a time of enactment and a termination time, and is always by law variably constructed under Constitution law by no other methodology. And that's what is known as, when the question comes before any person who claims authority, are you, he or she, an Article 3 judicial constitutional officer? Just that simple. And if they don't answer it, you already know they're a fraud, and they ain't going to answer it because they're actually foreign corporate operatives. That's why they don't teach people to do quo warrantos. And this is back to even when Drew Ali said enforce the Constitution. The more you understand that, the more you will understand when you enforce the Constitution, you're enforcing treaties, which supersede the Constitution. And it's the supreme law of the land. And the judges of every state must abide thereby and must support it. And that includes the judicial officers, the executive, etc., legislative, etc. And any laws of any state to the contrary has no standing whatsoever. That's why it says notwithstanding. So read Article 3 of the Constitution for the United States. Read Article 4, Section 4 of the Constitution for the United States. Read Article 6 of the Constitution for the United States. And read Act 6 of the Divine Constitution and Bylaws of the Moorish Divine and National Movement via the Moorish Holy Temple of Science and the Moorish Science Temple of America, and see that they obviously harmonize. And that's as a counter to many of the naysayers that have been infiltrated among us.
Question is, can you explain apostille number 1?
Apostille is generally still you're dealing with jurisdiction. So and this is back to my argument with many people who keep calling the de facto operatives government. They're seeking for them to give them what you call, not unlike say a fee simple type claim or an allodial claim. They have no capacity to exercise it because they're not the people of the land and they're not the legitimate government. The rights of sovereign divine right already belong to the people. This is where the Declaration of Nationality comes from, and this is where you organize, etc., in your judicial operations as justices, executing your right of execution of a state and reversion of a state. And of course, this is where your councils will come in. But those councils must be clear, and they're councils, not so much councils.
Here's a question from El Nucleus Bay. Should Moors be concerned about chakras and crystals?
Isn't that part of African culture? Aren't you going back to your culture on multiple levels? Isn't that your relationship to nature and nature's law? Distinguished from the artificialities that have been imposed upon the people? Just a reminder. So I'm not saying pro or con. I'm saying answer your own questions. It becomes obvious.
Okay, let me see. I thought I asked you this question. Didn't I ask you about the locked up politicians? I don't know whether you answered it.
No, we didn't go into that. That's what's taking place right now with what you now. Remember, we were talking earlier, and I think we got distracted with the multiple levels of the questions and the necessity to actually talk some of the paradigms of the operations. During the Lincoln administration, when they did what is known as the Sine Die action of covert subversion and misprision, which would include the assassination of Lincoln, which is simply a part of this construction. And they under de facto operations enforced the doctrine of discovery and the unum sanctum operations under the Circle Church and Chancery. And this is where those operatives of the Bar Association are actually running all the courts, etc. And so when you're looking at, you understand also that during the Lincoln administration, he set up a small cadre of generals, etc., within the military to protect the Constitution and treaty operations, or the legitimate operations of the United States Republic. And that operation is called Q. And I'm sure that many of you heard this word Q being thrown around in the recent years and thinking that it's a new thing. Well, that started during the Lincoln administration. That Q operation was assigned to Donald J. Trump by the part of the military that has maintained loyalty to the Republic order of legitimate business at Morocco, etc., under the United States, or States United, the Republic, distinguished from the U.S. democracy platform of the dark priesthood of the Circle Church and Chancery. And so Donald Trump was assigned to restore as a figurehead, because there's really a lot of other people behind him, the order of the Republic. And logically, by virtue of that, the treaty enforcement and everything else to the true heirs of the land comes into play. And I remind Moors of that. It's not so much the Constitution as they see on the surface, it's what that really implies. And your mind needs to go back to the issue that all treaties and agreements entered into before the adoption of that Constitution shall be binding upon the United States, etc., as well as under the Confederation. And all treaties made or which shall be made under the authority of the United States shall be the supreme law of the land. Once you start seeing that in Article 6, you start recognizing the implications. And of course, you understand why some of your so-called black civilized or civil rights leaders and none of your politicians will make emphasis on that, nor will they make emphasis what I read to you earlier from the treaty book, etc. And why constitutional principles are always presented to our people from the perspective that it doesn't apply to us, when in fact it's a key tie to the enforcement of the treaties. And it's the supreme law of the land.
But with regard to these politicians, I'm
they're being arrested.
Yeah, that was
under
the question.
misprision and treason. Now look at these terms and write these down.
But why are we still seeing them?
Yeah, but I'm just CGI and other things, in clones and doubles.
All right,
let's look at mandates distinguished from supreme law. Let's look at Constitution and treaty obligations enforcements. And these things you write down because we're not going to go into all these things. Let's look at the motu proprio presented by Pope Francis in 2013. Let's look at world government corporations that went bankrupt in these late years, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. And you'll see that the United States is prominently listed that they're bankrupt. Look at the meeting that the Pope had with so-called religious leaders from all persuasions, etc., Islam, so-called Judaism, and Christianity. And you noticed how all of them were kissing his finger. And you want to understand the dogma situation. and their promise to stop exercising the doctrine of discovery, which has still been enforced, that our people been falsely told was racism and prejudice to cover it up. And this is why people that keep on promoting the race paradigm are frauds, not because I say so, because when you know the real history, you already know they're in place to divert your attention from the reality of the doctrine of discovery and unum sanctum operations. And therefore, our people have been continuously being injured. And of course, this is back to the issue of my concern with people who have this knowledge. Get out in the field, get your hands dirty, take off them royal clothes, and start liberating your people. Like Noble Drew Ali said, with all these sheiks and sheikesses and grand sheiks, he says, the hedges and the highways, which means take it to the people. Excuse me. Go ahead, Dr. Nayyib.
Well, so I need you to weigh in on this because there's a comment here. T is not a more, B either. So, wait a minute, let me finish before you say it. T is not a more, B either. So I'm thinking that it is like double teaming against the Moors. Look at what's happening. And then the other follow-up is that this individual says, my reading as well, Taj confuses on this. So the fact that I'm just saying,
yeah, go ahead.
I'm putting them back both there because you know what they're saying.
I'll explain. Go ahead.
When you talk about them being being assigned, they're saying, and
right,
with good reason, that neither of them are Moors.
Legitimate statement. Go ahead.
And we've even said that.
Statement.
We've even said that with regard to where do we figure in
legitimate statement
to the fight that is over our estate.
Legitimate statement.
Okay, so weigh in.
And legitimate statement and legitimate critique.
Okay.
Now you got to look at what you call political chess. You make a move, Rome makes a move. All right? What is it that Trump's assigned to do? To restore the republic. This is on their part with the military, because the nations won't trade with them anymore, and they won't buy U.S. Treasury bonds anymore, which are the foundation for their economic system that made the Jesuit Order's Federal Reserve what is known as the reserve currency for the world, a status which has been lost. However, you're in flux. When I say you're in flux, because they have been controlling under feudal law your estate. This is back to you comprehending that you've been under occupation. Therefore, you have interest. You have interest because they're occupying your land. They're occupying your estate. They've stolen your gold.